When it comes to open problem research, no one knows the answer, and so we're all equals. It sort of breaks the traditional model of hierarchy of like, oh, the professor knows everything, and then the students are just trying to learn what the professor knows. That's like the, I guess, traditional model of education. And it's never been truthful. I always learned from my students.
But they need to know the other person's that they got.
We don't just study games, but I think a lot of students take this class because it's fun, because we get to think about games all day. Tetris is something called NP complete. Chess is something called X time complete. So these are all results saying that these games are hard to play perfectly. And that kind of explains why they are challenging, and at a philosophical level, why we consider those games fun, I think, is because humans like a challenge. And so this is a computer science way of formalizing what it means for a game to be challenging. At the scale of 50 or 60 students, you can't get a global sense of what everyone is doing once you're in your little group. So to fix that, we heavily use a piece of software that I wrote called Co-Author. Whatever ideas you come up with, you post them on this system. The discussion is organized into threads, and so if you want to know what people have been doing with context for problem, you just click on it and you can see all the discussion. Having this medium where we can record ideas and thoughts that people can follow up on later makes it feasible to have really useful contributions from everyone, even though we have 60 people.
It allows a whole bunch of asynchronous communication between the students, which is really cool. Between classes, we will see people will have ideas, work on them, put their ideas up, and sometimes get feedback.
There was a post about parameterized complexity for Sokoban, so if you're interested in Sokoban, check that out.
There are some students who post dozens of messages every week because they're really excited and working on lots of different things. This digital system becomes the archive of what we did each week. So it's right there in the name that you're supposed to use the software to co-author papers together. We've posed 130 open problems, which was a huge number, but we made substantial progress in 75 of them. This is a pretty huge set of research. There will definitely be dozens of papers to come out of this.
Where this distance is like x minus 2, and this distance is x plus 2.
A dozen different research groups in the world use co-author for their own research collaborations, and at MIT it's slowly spreading, and my goal is to get it more and more popular.
So you're forced to decrease like a amount that you can control.
The name of the course is Science Writing for the Public. We look at a lot of different samples, like what does an explainer piece look like on Vox.com versus 538.com, and how do these different online publications have different audiences, and how do they arrange their information differently? How are their visuals different? They can do a podcast. I have a number of students that elect to do podcasts. I've had some that have done multimedia slide explainer presentations in the style of the New York Times. I have them write a Wikipedia article. And it's funny because I think many or most of the students I get are freshmen, and they have had it sort of drilled into them in high school. Wikipedia is terrible, don't use Wikipedia, even though we all use it. In the English language edition, there are 5.5 million articles. The scale, it's huge, but yet it functions. So we talk a lot about, collaboration online, and they love it, and they have written amazing articles on really complex scientific topics. I had a freshman this fall who wrote the Introduction to Electromagnetism.
The subject matter is invisible. It's electromagnetic fields. It's very hard to get much physical intuition out of all the math. I use a lot of visualizations in class to try to bring out what's going on physically. Your brain has an incredible amount of processing power associated with vision.
Physics is just really abstract. To be able to visualize charged objects moving or electric fields changing over time not only helps you to learn it, but really helps you to remember it. This class at MIT was one of the best classes I've taken here.
I do think we're on the cusp of a new age in technology. Things will be totally different in 10 years. I'm really interested in virtual reality, being able to have standalone headsets which have 6 degrees of freedom, which means you can move around and you can move around objects in the virtual space. And you can be in that virtual space with another student or a professor.
I study subjective value in negotiation, which is the idea that negotiation is not just about the economic outcome that you achieve, but also how you feel and how you make your counterpart feel when you negotiate. And one of the things that the digital technology allows us to do is provide participants with feedback on the impressions that they're making on their negotiation counterparts. And I think that can be helpful not just for teaching, but also for research on subjective value in negotiation.
Good job, everyone. No, I'm gonna give you some credit.
When I used to teach negotiation, I followed a conventional model of how people teach negotiation, which is you have participants do a negotiation, then you have them report their outcomes on paper, then you take all that paper and you enter it into an Excel spreadsheet, and you analyze the results, and then you provide it to them a week later. And this was all fine, and it was working okay, until I was asked to teach a course in our executive education program. They said, we want you to teach these participants for 3 days straight. And I said, I'm not sure if I can do that, because how could we possibly run these analyses so quickly? They said, maybe you can figure out a way to use technology to get this done. So we ended up creating algorithms that would allow us to analyze all the data so that the surveys would generate the feedback instantly. And this ended up working so well that now I use it in all of my classes.
As you can see in red, the other port says voting no, 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 no.
Using the technology interactively like he does, you see all of the classroom real-time scoring of the results afterwards, and you get to walk through the analysis and really understand how you responded to something, how your response was against the average of the whole class. It's a very novel way. I haven't seen this used in other classes.
Sometimes while participants negotiate, we'll have them negotiate via a video chat, and with their consent, we record their negotiations. We can apply the affectiva algorithm to measure facial expressions that could have an influence on negotiation.
I want you to watch the guy on the left and watch his eyebrows right here.
Through this award, I've started to become more aware of my own use of digital technology in the classroom and intellectualize it a little bit more. Think about how it's going, what's going well and what's not going well, and what does it mean for the bigger question of how people use technology in the classroom.